The story of my $45 million inheritance. I hadn't even told my husband yet when his own lawyer called and said he already filed. I stayed silent for 5 seconds. Then I made my first move. Charlotte, North Carolina. A rainy Thursday afternoon. The kind of gray that sinks into your bones before you even notice it's raining. Traffic crawled along I-77, headlights smearing across the wet asphalt. The smell of rain on concrete mixing with roasted coffee drifting out of a corner cafe. My name is Lily Harper. I was 34 years old, a creative director at a mid-size marketing firm downtown. My husband, Daniel, was a project manager at a logistics startup. Ambitious, charming, the kind of man who remembered how you took your coffee after one date. We'd been married 6 years. Good years, I thought. He kissed me goodbye every morning, asked about my day every night. What woman doesn't want to believe her marriage survived the hard years intact? We tried for a baby for 3 years. Nothing worked. I sat through most of the fertility appointments alone because Daniel was slammed at work. My mother-in-law, Carol, never missed a chance to remind me. A marriage needs children, Lily. Don't wait too long. I'd smile and swallow it, because saying something never fixed anything with Carol. Words are cheap, but the ones that cut deepest always come dressed as concern. Lately, something had shifted in Daniel. Small things first. A laptop angled away from me at the kitchen table, calls he took standing in the driveway at 11 p.m. in November, breath fogging in the cold, not even feeling it. When I asked if everything was okay, he'd give that same easy smile from our first date. Just work stress, babe. I wanted to believe him. So I did. Trust doesn't break all at once. It erodes, one excused absence at a time. Years before any of this, I'd helped a woman named Bree Sutton, a temp at Daniel's office, who'd been evicted and drowning in debt. I quietly paid off $6,000 of it, found her an apartment, even had her over for dinner once. She cried into my shoulder. I'll never forget this, Lily. Daniel barely looked up from his laptop that night. I remember thinking that was strange. I didn't know yet that some kindness plants the very seed of its own betrayal. My father, Robert Hayes, died on a Tuesday. Heart attack. No warning. He'd built a shipping logistics company out of a rented garage back in 1987, and I grew up thinking we were simply comfortable. Nice house, summers in Myrtle Beach. I had no idea he'd quietly built an empire. I buried him on a gray Saturday, rain coming down sideways, Daniel's hand in mine at the graveside. He whispered he'd take care of everything. I believed him. Grief makes you believe almost anyone who holds you upright. 2 days later, my father's attorney, Gregory Pine, sat me down in his office on Trade Street and read the will. The company, the investments, a house in Vermont I never knew existed. $45 million. I didn't feel joy sitting in that leather chair. I felt fear. Because somewhere underneath the grief, some part of me already sensed something was wrong at home. For 3 days, I told Daniel nothing. I told myself I was waiting for the right moment, a quiet dinner, the right words. If I'm honest, some old animal instinct kept whispering, "Watch him first." So I watched. I watched him leave for the office at odd hours. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself grief was making me paranoid of the one man who was supposed to be my safe place. Then came Thursday. I was standing at my kitchen sink, coffee going cold in my hand, when my phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Harper, this is attorney Marcus Cole calling about the Harper divorce filing. I laughed. Actually laughed. Alone in my kitchen. You have the wrong number. A pause. The kind of pause that tells you something before the words even arrive. Ma'am, your husband filed 11 days ago. I assumed you'd already been served. 11 days. Before my father's estate was even finalized. Before the number 45 million was ever spoken aloud. Daniel hadn't filed because of the money. He filed because he was already gone. Long before there was anything to leave. All those driveway calls. All that distance I'd explained away as stress. He let me cry into his shoulder at my father's funeral 4 days after he'd already filed to leave me. I sat down on the kitchen floor and didn't cry. Something in my chest just went cold and very, very clear. If you've ever seen someone's true face for the first time, stay with me, because this story is about to turn. And if it's hitting you the way it hit me, hit subscribe now, because what I did next isn't what anyone expects from a grieving widow.
That night, Daniel came home at 6:15, kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. I set 2 plates. "I need to tell you 2 things," I said. First, the inheritance. I watched the calculation move behind his eyes, a man realizing he'd filed 1 week too early to touch a fortune he never knew was coming. Second, I said, sliding a paper across the table, Marcus Cole already told me everything. 11 days, Daniel. So let's not pretend. He went white, said nothing. Silence, I was learning, is sometimes the loudest confession there is.
I didn't scream that night. I called my attorney, a sharp, unshakable woman named Renata Voss, the next morning. "Don't sign anything," she said, "and don't let him know you're building a case." I hired a private investigator named Sam Ortiz. 3 days later, he sent me an address in Asheville and a name on the lease that stopped my heart. Bree Sutton. The woman I had once rescued from eviction was now raising a 2-year-old boy. Daniel visited 4 nights a week. Sam's photos showed him lifting the child onto his shoulders in the yard, laughing the exact laugh he used to save only for me. Renata's forensic audit found something worse. Nearly $80,000 quietly diverted from our joint account into Bree's name over 2 years. The kindness I had given that woman had become the very rope Daniel used to build his second life. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. "You were never around, Lily. I needed something real." Then he tried a different weapon, hinting he still had access to my father's business accounts and could make probate messy if I pushed too hard. I recorded every word on my phone, hidden in my sweater pocket. I didn't flinch. I went home and told Renata 1 sentence. "Freeze everything. File first." Word got out anyway. Carol called relatives and spun a story that I had abandoned her son in his time of need. At a family dinner 2 weeks later, she said it to my face, in front of everyone, smiling like grief had made me the villain. I stood up and read the bank transfer records out loud instead. The room went dead silent. Sometimes the truth doesn't need to be shouted. It just needs to be read aloud once. Clearly. In the right room. At the final settlement hearing, Renata laid it all out. The embezzled funds, the fraudulent early filing, the recorded threat. Daniel's attorney folded within the hour. He walked away with nothing but his name and a paternity test confirming a truth he'd hidden even from himself. Bree lost her lease within the month, once the money stopped moving. Carol never spoke to me again, which, I've come to learn, was less a punishment and more a mercy. I inherited $45 million that October, but it was one Thursday phone call that gave me something worth infinitely more. The truth, months before Daniel ever planned to let me see it, and the quiet, unshakable power of a woman who finally stopped waiting for someone else's honesty to catch up to her own.